All right, dude, let's go. We'll hit this.
Uh,
What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, and I'm joined, as always, with Lobo college football writer, Sean Reider. Sean, what's up, man?
Not much, Geoff. Thank you for having me on Albuquerque Journal Sports Live, per usual.
It is a bye week, obviously, for Lobo football. As he did in his previous bye week, Bronco Mendenhall still held his weekly press conference, and I guess let's just start with what went on at the presser. Then I kind of see us doing one more kind of recap and putting a bow on my favorite saying for this show is putting a bow on the game Saturday in Las Cruces, and then we'll kind of look ahead at the bye week and what's to come for Lobo football. But we'll start with the presser. Any news come out of today's press conference with Bronco Mendenhall?
So one thing I was curious about, and I probably should have asked it last week, but decided to get it done today. Has UNM made any redshirt decisions to this point? Because as we all know, the 4-game cutoff is kind of there and in place and all that. And he said they have only made one. Bronco Mendenhall said they have only made one redshirt decision at this point. He did not say who the redshirt decision was. And so that is something that I will be doing a little more digging on. But there is one redshirt to this point in the season. He did give a pretty good update on the Andrew Henry situation at this point. He clarified that it was something that we knew and we had reported, but he clarified that it is an eligibility issue to this point in regards to what he did at a previous stop when he was playing at a junior college, Fort Scott Community College in Kansas. I don't know exactly what town it is in Kansas, probably Fort Scott. And the NCAA said that Mendenhall basically said the NCAA came to them and said, we think he is out of eligibility at this point. So he will be out for he will probably be out for the rest of his college career at this point due to that ruling. There is an appeals process. Mendenhall said he wasn't quite sure if they had done the appeal in terms of Andrew and his family and all that. But yeah, so that is kind of the most recent update we have on that. Beyond that, the only other injury confirmation I was kind of looking for today was Cam Watts, defensive back, safety, corner. He's played both. He is currently injured as well. That's explained his absence in the New Mexico State game.
To be clear, the Andrew Henry, we're kind of reading between the lines here because Broncos chosen not to talk about who's redshirting or who's made the redshirt decision. Andrew Henry is not the redshirt decision.
Yes. Yeah, no, right? He doesn't. Yeah, he does not have. He could not redshirt because he doesn't have any. The NCAA is ruling that he has no eligibility remaining right now.
So I'm wondering, Amy Began, who's the director of compliance there at UNM, filed whatever paperwork or whatever they need to do, I'm sure, for UNM. If they get a ruling back, say in the next week, in the bye week or whatever, and he can come back, I wonder then if I guess he is out of redshirt. So he just, if his ruling comes the last week of the season that he can still play, he's just sort of out of luck at this point, right? And can play one game and that's it. Because I can't imagine they would then allow him to use this as a redshirt since he's already missed 5 games. So if he does get ruled, if they rule in his favor at some point, he's just stuck with what games are left, I would think.
Yeah, and that's sort of that's kind of the, I don't know about if unfair is the right thing to use, but I mean, it's obviously kind of a slower process. And it's exactly what, from what I can tell, reading between the lines over in Tucson, what Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's going through right now at Arizona. It seems like a similar deal in regards to, his time at Alabama State before he came to UNM. UNM's top 2 leading rushers last season are both out due to eligibility concerns. Did not have that on my bingo card at this point.
And not eligibility concerns, just to be clear, that term often implies grades, or we think. And grades. We don't have any indication that this is a grade issue in any way. It has to do with the transferring and stuff like that. I'm I am curious what else at the presser today kind of came about in terms of comments on anything about, like, I'll go away from the game first. Anything about conference realignment, anything about obviously injuries, like you already alluded to. Not a whole lot comes out of injuries ever. But anything more kind of big picture or off the field, then I want to get into the game. Did Bronco talk about any of that kind of stuff, or what the schedule of a bye week might be this week?
Yeah, so he did not. He said he has not settled on a schedule for the bye week. He really only has today kind of locked in terms of what they're going to do. It wasn't quite. There wasn't a spiel like last time where Thursday is going to be Monday and Wednesday is going to be Tuesday and
Right.
Saturday is going to be Thursday and all that. He said he hasn't locked in the schedule, but the big picture here, one of the things that he said that stood out to me was, he said that going into this season, he had never been in a season where he had 2 bye weeks before. He has 3. Now, the 2 really, on the front end are probably the ones that count. The one that happened in between the Arizona game and the Auburn game, and then the one this week in between New Mexico State and the Air Force game on October 12th. Probably the most meaningful ones.
Sure.
The third one is the late one. It's right before their very last game at Hawaii. And certainly having that bye week going into that trip is awfully helpful in a lot of respects. But he said that, and this is something I kind of always thought. I keep using the phrase "reading between the lines" in terms of listening to him talk. You could kind of tell that he wasn't the biggest fan. He wasn't opposed to 3 bye weeks and multiple bye weeks and all that, but he kind of came out and said it today. He said, I kind of had a negative twist towards the idea of having, multiple bye weeks. You want a team to get into a rhythm on a week-to-week basis, and that's how you start building things and kind of get on a roll, and the things that you're doing well carry over from week to week at that point, as opposed to being broken up by multiple bye weeks. He said today, if he could have placed a bye week anywhere on the schedule, he would have placed it this week. That is how injured they are on defense at this point. He said there's a chance that 6 to 7 defensive players that are injured right now could return against Air Force, but that's a chance, right? That's not a clear-cut thing. They are out tons and tons of guys on defense. They only got Kyler Drake for 3 snaps. Excuse me. On Saturday night against New Mexico State, Gabe Lopez was out. Bobby Arnold is out. Cam Watts is out. Just a whole lot of depth issues at this point on defense, and to the point where I didn't. He said this on Saturday night when we talked to him, and I didn't mention this in the terms of I didn't mention this during the live show on Saturday night too. One of the explanations he had for the kind of wild finish defensively, the 20 points that NMSC put up in the fourth quarter was that, and this is included in a notebook I wrote today too, was that they simply just ran out of players. They could not have dime, prevent coverages and packages out there. They didn't have the players at that point to put that out there. And so that kind of left them with a hand tied behind the back as NMSC was trying to throw it more and push things downfield. So the big picture at this point for me is, me looking at it, is really, this defense is really injured. They really need this week. I think the offense needs this week as well. There's injuries on the offensive line. Mendenhall said they're probably about 2 injuries away from the offensive line being in a similar predicament to the defensive front at this point. You can kind of tell that as well at this point too. That being said, he also complimented the offensive line today too. It's the first time I'd ever heard him actually mention, without one of us mentioning it, that the offensive line has not given up a sack so far through 5 games, with all of the shuffling that has occurred on the offensive line since fall camp.
I'm gonna jump now to, there are some questions that aren't in our queue in our little setup here, because I did, before we went live, ask people to send in their comments, and so some of them did on Twitter, or on X rather. So I'm going to read some from there. First thing I want to jump into a video right now from Saturday's post game that UNM posted, and again, for those that may not know, the UNM Lobos did beat rival New Mexico State Aggies 50-40 on Saturday in Las Cruces. And here is what I'm going to keep the audio on this. Here is what the Lobos posted. Went on in the post game locker tent. I don't want to call it a locker room.
Yeah, I'll explain this. So if you've never been down at Aggie Memorial Stadium, so you have the field, and then NMSU's locker room is kind of near the tunnel that they walk out to when they walk out to the field and all that. That's where the facility is. If you're a visiting team, it's not it's shed is not the right term at all. But it's a smaller building where there is a little weight room facility, for NMSU and all that. And then the locker room was kind of inside, but off to the side, I had never seen this before by any visiting team. UNM set up this tent, and after they kind of all came in to the locker room and all that, they all sprinted over inside this tent. Mendenhall did what we're about to show you right now, and then they played, and they just bumped music for a bit as well.
How about I put the volume on and restart
today? This is who I'm feeling today, right? 122 yards rushing. I think it was 3 touchdowns.
I'll let that run again with the volume off. People can kind of keep watching as we talk. I want to start at the end of this video. Excuse me. What is it that he is breaking there?
So they brought out. So I have not seen. So it's like a rock, right? And it's painted blue. I have not seen it, or turquoise. Really, this one's more turquoise. I haven't seen the rock get brought out since Montana State week. I remember during stretch lines that week, they had the Montana State rock out there in the middle of stretch lines. Not before the game, but, like during the week of practice and all that. And I asked him afterwards, and he said that's a tradition that I believe Sean Griswold, who was an old strength coach that Mendenhall had at Virginia. He was on staff when Mendenhall was at Virginia. I think he's at SMU right now. That probably doesn't matter to the overall thing at this moment, too. That's kind of a tradition he instituted. In terms of, you win, you break the rock, and the team's logo is on it. I think the split second you could see kind of the New Mexico State logo there, or one of the New Mexico State logos, and that's something that they do. Obviously, we have not had a reason to see the rock get broken or show this video until this particular game, but that is kind of the thing there. That's a tradition that's carried over from Virginia, and they did it in the tent outside the kind of visiting locker room.
I'm going to have to look up that. You're going to have to verify that name for me at some point. Sean Griswold, because he is a local journalist.
Oh, I think it.
So do you have his name in your, like, you just have the wrong name, or is there another Sean Griswold? So what's that?
No, it is Sean Griswold. It is spelled with a W instead of a U.
All right.
So Sean Griswold. There are 2 Sean Griswolds out there that have interesting New Mexico connections.
There are 2 Geoff Grammers, even with the GEOFF in the world. One is running for Congress in like Virginia or something. So, and then the other one is not.
There's other screenwriters. All of them spell their names incorrectly. Every single one of them.
All right. I'm gonna drop in a couple comments now because they do relate to the game. Some of them even to Rogers. Specifically, which was kind of addressed by Bronco right there. Obviously, he had a great game. We got our regulars here on YouTube, Craig Johnson. What's y'all's take on the absolute silence around conference realignment? This is probably a bad one to start with, but I'll do it anyway. And then he has another one similar, conference realignment, silence over the weekend. Also, Nakari Rogers.
You want me to take Rogers first before we get into realignment?
Yeah. What is it, Nakari or Nakari?
Nakari. And so this is one thing too. I interviewed Nakari over the summer, and I asked him, "Do you prefer the apostrophe in between the A and the Q?" And he told me yes. But every UNM spelling is not had that way. I've wrote of the apostrophe just because he's told me that. But I guess that's one very minor clerical detail. I don't know why. I just felt the need to put it out there. But yeah, look, we've seen Rogers in his own words on Saturday night in a minimal role, and minimal has really not been actually minimal. It's been more short yardage stuff. Rogers is probably the closest thing that UNM has to a bruiser at running back at this point. Sanders and Jacobs just really aren't those guys in terms of build, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, they bring other things that are very good to the table in terms of skill sets and all that. Sanders more of a freelancer. Jacobs is probably the best pass catching back. Actually, probably not the best. I think he is the best. But Rogers, in terms of the role that he played, on Saturday night. Mendenhall said that it really was a deal where it was, look, he's had so much success in short yardage package to this point. Why not put him in other sets? I mean, and he's super physical. He's tough to bring down. He's tough to tackle. He's going to wear the other team down. That's not quite a quality that Sanders and Jacobs bring at this point. And it worked really well. I mean, they just kept leaning on him and leaning on him and leaning on him and leaning on him. And then he broke off that 29-yard that 29-yard rushing TD.
Yeah, I mean,
that did seal the win for UNM.
I mean, 21 carries, 122 yards, 3 touchdowns is going to be, in the running for like a player of the week, Mountain West Conference player of the week most weeks. What Devin Dampier
offensive player of the week most weeks in which Ashton Genty does not play a football game.
Well, the problem with the Mountain West this year is it's gonna be really hard for Devin to get many player of the weeks and for Nakari and for anybody else in the league to get many player of the weeks. Ashton Genty did in fact get offensive player of the week today for Boise State, as he will 5 other times this year probably. Devin though had another great week. 248 passing, 70 rushing, 3 touchdowns rushing.
One of them absolutely sensational. The outstretched arm for the pylon and all that. That's a play that I don't know a whole lot of New Mexico quarterbacks recently could have ever made in any capacity, and that's something that he brings to the table. And the other thing for me and Devin, no turnovers. That is,
and no sacks.
No turnovers, no sacks. Mendenhall mentioned today that, which I thought was also interesting too. He said that Devin was actually really disappointed after the Fresno State game in his performance. And Mendenhall said that wasn't me putting disappointment on him. That's just how he felt. And Mendenhall felt that some of the disappointment was just in two interceptions for a 3rd straight game, and he cleaned that up against New Mexico State. It wasn't always perfect. I mean, he certainly kind of sailed some throws in some occasions and all that. How much of that was intentional, I'm not totally sure at this point. We'll talk to him tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, it was enough to get the win, build a lead, and keep it in the end.
I don't know. Adam Lopez commented, if I saw correctly, Dampier had one of the highest quarterback ratings of the week in the country. Probably true because he had a really good game, but I'm just going with the probablys about the extent I can go with there, because I don't know what some other quarterbacks around the country did. But the reality is this: Donovan has had
Devin,
Jeff. I keep calling him Donovan. I keep tweeting Donovan. I am in basketball. I am the basketball writer, and Donovan Dent is the leader of the Lobo basketball team.
That'd be a great podcast. You get the 2 DDs together. I mean,
I know, right?
That would really be, that's good content right there.
DD and DD. Devin Dampier has statistically had a fabulous season. I don't say that to sort of like backhanded sort of imply he's not also leading the team. He's been great all around. And his stats have been great. Usually a quarterback is tied to wins and losses a little more, and you kind of criticize the quarterback if they aren't winning, or you give them more credit than deserved if they are winning. As of right now, when they're rebuilding, I wouldn't put too much on Devin Dampier in terms of the 4 losses. This is a team effort right now, but he's having a special season. And even at 1-4, I asked the question Saturday night. The fact that it is even in the, like, I think a fair question is probably telling enough right now for a 1-4 team. But is Devin Dampier the best quarterback in the Mountain West right now? Obviously, a couple other quarterbacks, their teams would probably still go with their guy, but like Devin Dampier might be in the top 3 right now. I think 3 is about as low as I would go. And San Jose State and, of course, Fresno State are the 2 quarterbacks that you might go with before Devin Dampier. But after that, you can't convince me that there's a good case to be made for a quarterback in this league that's playing better than Devin Dampier right now.
Yeah, and I think I would I think I said this on Saturday night. I think I would still no offense to Devin, I cover him on a day-to-day basis. I think I would still probably take Keene, but I've also seen more Keene as a starter, and just kind of, you have a larger sample size there, and you've seen him in more situations, and you've seen him in more winning situations too. But yeah, I don't think you could put him. I really don't think you could put him farther down than 4.
Who am I missing as the fourth to throw in the mix? I
Yeah,
mean,
see, that's I don't know. Look here.
obviously UNLV you can't, and UNLV and Boise is in terms of winning. Again, as I just alluded
You
to,
can't yet. Maybe you could.
and
It
there's a good one game sample, that's for sure.
Ironically, we're talking about QBR on the season. Who do you think is leading in the Mountain West in terms of season QBR to this point?
I'm guessing Emmett. Is Emmett Brown leading?
He's third. Devin is two. Who do you think is one?
I mean, you've mentioned Keene. Is it Keene?
Keene is six.
I don't know. Who's it?
I will tell you that his value, according to Circus Sports, is about $100K. It is Matthew Sluka with a quarterback rating of 74. So it's Sluka at 74, Devin Dampier at 70.7, and those are the only two that are above 70 right now in terms of QBR, QB rating. Emmett Brown's 3 at 62.9. Maddox Madsen is 60. I don't know. I feel like the conversation about Maddox Madsen is so Rob is so jilted just because of the fact that they have Malachi. What's his name? The 5-star USC kid, Malachi or whatever.
Malachi, yeah.
I keep wanting to say Malachi Flynn.
I know it's not Malachi Flynn, the San Diego State point guard.
It's legend Malachi Flynn.
Anyway, go move on. Because I'm pulling it up.
I feel like the conversation around that is so jilted because I know a lot of Boise fans and even some Boise media expected Malachi to win that job in camp, and Maddox Madsen actually did. And
Nelson.
I was seeing
Malachi Nelson, by the way.
And I was even seeing people kind of project it out, where they were saying, Maddox is probably going to start the first 2 games, and then they're going to play Oregon, and then they don't want to throw Malachi Nelson to the Wolves, so they're going to, they're going to ride Nelson after that, and that has not happened. Dirk Cutter has decided to ride with Madsen, and I think that's a fine choice at this point. Rob also just put up. Bet you $5. Yeah, Malachi Nelson, thank you. And then Rob also put up Braden Fowler Nicolosi at Colorado State. It has not been great so far. I do think he could finish the season strong, though. But that offense is so weird right now. It is not what Colorado State has tried to do under Norvell in the past. It seems like they're trying to out tough opponents, and that's just not really what that offense is.
Let me out Rob a little bit here. He is a Lobo fan first. He does live in Fort Collins, and
okay. Well, Rob,
very much the Colorado State guy second. So let me throw that out there.
I see the vision, and then Air Force's John Busha is 12th with a QBR of 9.3. But some of that definitely has to do with what Air Force does on offense. Air afraid, as they might say.
All right. This is comment. I should probably pull it up somehow better than this.
On the other tweet?
This is on some other tweets here. At High Desert, Lobo asked right before the show started, does coach expect the defense to take a step forward, and how does he plan to clean up the penalties? That's a good opportunity to again point out that this is a national leading Lobo football team in penalties.
Yeah, I think
Did that come up?
Not a lot, to be honest with you. I think the one in terms of the defensive aspect of that question, one of the things that I would say to that part is that I think he expects it to get better. One, because of the fact that if the defense gets healthier, then they're going to be in a position to play better at this point because if you're in a position to actually use the packages you want when the situations are there, that's going to help. Brent Mendenhall has said this pretty frequently, pretty much every Monday presser. He says he's seeing improvement, steady, not huge, on a game-to-game basis and all that in the defense. And he said that again today. So I think that would be the expectation there as well. Penalties were not a huge talking point today, to be honest with you. But yes, they are now bottom in the country, or leading the country, you could say, I think with 10.1 penalties per game, 10.8 penalties per game.
I'm looking at 59
the
total yards.
And then they're the only team also averaging triple digits per game in terms of penalty yardage. There was a stat correction. So some big news here. We said on the live show that UNM had 13 penalties for 143 yards. They actually had 14 due to a stat correction. I don't know what was corrected over. I'm going to have to try and find that. But 14 penalties for a school record 170 yards. So against Auburn, they had a school record 16 penalties in a road game. And then against Fresno State, they had a school record in a single game with 17 penalties. And then against New Mexico State, they had a school record in penalty yardage in a game with 170. So that's 3 new school records in 3 straight weeks that I'm not sure anybody is particularly pleased about at this point.
The as it stands right now, the NCAA.org stats. I thought there were 134 FBS one.
There's 134, yeah.
NCAA.org only lists 133 for whatever. I guess there's one in transition that I'm forgetting about.
Are they not recognizing Kennesaw or like?
I don't know who it is that they're not recognizing. Well, I guess at the bottom here it'll show, right? Kennesaw State. Yeah, Kennesaw State is 134 that they're not recognizing in these stats.
There we go.
But I can tell you it does show their stats, and that wouldn't affect this. The Lobos rank dead last, 133 out of 133, or 134 out of 134 if you want to add Kennesaw State. Yeah, as you mentioned, in total penalty yards, total penalties, and their yardage per game right now is at 101. Second worst in the nation is another Mountain West team, San Diego State, at 96.3 yards per game. And then there's a jump to 92. So the Lobos are actually about 10 yards or right at 9 yards worse than just the third worst. And usually out of 134 teams, you're going to be clumped in a yard or two difference between all these teams. And UNM's not just the worst. They got some ways to go just to get to like third or fourth worst.
Yeah, it's not a great situation right now. And at this point, it was you have to clean it up on a certain point in the sense of like one, if it keeps up, it's going to help you lose games, or not help you lose games, make you lose games. And two, it's just it's clearly annoying players, and it's clearly annoying coaches at this point. The fact that's happening. Flip the script says, you want me to read it? Or you want to read it? I feel like the NCAA has a vendetta out for UNM with all these penalties. You can't convince me the other teams are playing all that clean compared to UNM. There might be something with that second point. To be honest,
I'll say this. I do think that there's some reputation. Referees watch game film too, and they know a little bit about teams before they come in. So in any 50-50 call or benefit of the doubt kind of call, a team that leads the nation in penalties probably isn't getting any benefit of the doubt. The Lobos have lost that. That could be viewed as vendetta. But I don't know. They've earned this, though.
And that's something that even Danny talked about last year, because they were bottom of the country in both marks last season as well. And Danny brought that up a couple times too. Whether I know if it's coming, if that's a carryover from last year to this year, or if this is all just, kind of on the, like this 3-game stretch or whatever.
Right.
Probably not. I don't know if vendetta is the right word, but I think the point that Geoff made there is pretty valid. And yeah, you flip the script. I mean, I don't think it's, I don't think UNM is playing particularly dirty in some ways, but other teams are not playing, significant. There's certain other teams that are not playing significantly more clean.
Right.
AA. Is Paul Gates really responsible for 3 to 4 a game?
Man, I think he is.
Is it really at this point?
Because it seems like that to me. I mean, I don't know the numbers, so let's verify that, or let's put that in context.
Yeah, I don't want to
estimate, and I'm not verifying it. But man, I'll tell you what, I think I agree with Rob. It's about 3 or 4 a game, and they all seem to be the big yardage ones because they're pass interferences a lot and stuff like that. I do think that at least one of his pass interferences was at least a questionable one. But there was a call that I thought either he was beat on, which isn't good either, right? But I think there's some pass interferences that the Lobos have been called on where the defensive back saves a touchdown by committing the foul because he had already been beat and might have given up a touchdown otherwise. That's not saying it's a great play. It's saying it is what it is. Sometimes a penalty might not be as accidental as you might think.
So we have right now, hold on, I'm pulling up this isn't good. No, this isn't good for Noah. So there is a holding penalty, a 1 pass interference penalty, and then he had the horse collar tackle. So
Yeah.
that is,
it was that horse collar tackle. Let me bring that one up.
Tackle's really it, because I mean, I didn't remember that many pass interferences, and it was just
Okay,
one.
I recall the horse collar tackle.
Yeah.
That was one on a kick return, if I'm not mistaken, where I think he gets around that corner, around that edge. He might have taken it to the house. Was it Mike Washington returning a kick, maybe, or I don't know who it was, but if I recall, the
I
horse
think
collar
it
tackle
Yeah.
was a kick return right around the edge that he gets around Nola there, and he might have taken it. So again, 15 yards. It was earned. It was the right call, but it also might have saved a touchdown. That is doing some extra work to sort of okay these penalties. He does need to clean it up, man.
Yeah, and then against Fresno State, he had one holding penalty and then one pass interference.
Okay.
I could pull up Auburn if we want. I don't really remember anything from him on Auburn, though. That was a lot of offensive penalties that night, pretty overwhelmingly.
And I do remember against Arizona, he had a good game.
Yeah, and I don't think Noah's been bad by any stretch in the field, but obviously, like, that is, if anything, I think he's been pretty solid given the circumstances that he's kind of coming into. And certainly that Arizona game, where I mean, he was really the one DB that played especially well, is worth noting. But yeah, I think we all remember, the prior history, right? Texas A&M last year. I mean, he basically had to get pulled off the field because he was committing penalties at just an exceptionally high level, and he led all FBS DBs. Actually, I don't know if I could say DBs, but safeties for sure in penalties in the season last year with 9. And that's not quite good to see if you're a UNM fan, that there's more penalties kind of taken up and all that too. So it didn't feel like that much in my mind, but no, I mean, they're definitely there.
I'm going to pull up some questions that I'm going to pull them up on the screen here so we can look at them if I get this right here. This is just on my Twitter feed here, and some people replied. Rob, who is in here, probably, let's see, could the offense be more complementary to the defense?
Let's go into this bottom Aztec to Tacoma.
Yeah, so these are the ones I was pulling up. I didn't realize Rob had the complementary one, offense, defense. But yes, the Aztec to Tacoma one at the very bottom, but also his other one is, I believe Tavian Combs is who he's referring to, but they're related.
No, Tavian Ford's a different guy. Tavian Ford is a guy that's played. He's played on the defensive line, and then he's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Tavian Combs because never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, in terms of the linebacker depth, and as like Tacoma, I think you've commented on this before, and rightfully so, because it's been a real question. The JUCO commit, I think you can correct me in the chat. I think you're talking about Nico Bowler. He's one of the 10 guys remaining that does not have a number at this point. So until he gets a number, he's just not going to play. We're going into, is this 6 weeks? Is this 7 weeks for UNM with the week 0 and all that? He just doesn't have a number at this point. In terms of Blake Tabarachi, the 3-star kid out of Park City, I really, the most I've heard about him has only been related to fall camp, and that was me asking linebacker coach Shane Hunter a little bit about him too. It seems like it's just a developmental spot where he's just kind of coming along, but he's not quite ready for actual game action at this kind of point. And so I mean, it is kind of weird that you thought there was going to be more depth there too. Let me pull up. I'm going to pull up the snap counts real quick because I don't want to. I really don't want to get these snap counts wrong too. One thing I do want to get a question I kind of want to get answered this week. I'm really doing a great job holding on. No snaps for Mahala Santoreneos against New Mexico State. And that's kind of been a question. I thought he was going to play more of a role than he has at this point in the season. I don't know if that is an injury either. There's so many, and this is one of the downsides of, this isn't the SEC of the Big Ten right now where you have mandated injury reports and all that. But a little bit of more of transparency of injuries would certainly help in terms of, okay, well, that's why this guy isn't playing, as opposed to, you're going through lists and snap counts and all that, and you're like, whoa, this guy's disappeared and all that. And I think I want to say I saw Mahalis on special teams on Saturday, but I did not see him on defense. That's for sure.
Let's throw in just to remind people that while he didn't play on Saturday, Gabe Lopez, right? Is it Gabe? That it had nothing to do with the end of the Fresno game.
Nothing to do with the disciplinary. Where he threw a disciplinary aspect. Where he threw a punch at the end of the Fresno State game. It was an injury. We don't know what the injury actually is at this point.
He was up and walking around. I mean, you could see him on the sideline, and I think they showed him on the sideline there. So.
Yeah, no, he was walking around wearing the jersey and all that. And then to get to the other Aztec to Tacoma question, excuse me. Tavian Ford is playing offensive line now. He did. I mean, that was the shift that they made in spring. Tavian was actually getting some pretty good reps in spring ball and all that, but he's. I mean, I don't think we've seen the offensive line as battered as it possibly could be. But at the same time, I mean, if it did get more battered, I think you could see some Ford on the offensive line. But I don't think they would make a switch back to him on the defensive line at that point too. What were the other questions we had on Twitter too? On the replies.
Yeah, I'll pull it back up. Could the offense be more complementary to keep the defense off the field? I think that's a fair question, but I don't know that they're exactly just airing it out with a bunch of stop clock kind of drives. Their time of possession's okay, but I mean, should they be milking the clock even more? Look, if their defense is the weak spot, then what you do is you try and keep your weak spot off the field, right? Obviously. So
yeah,
maybe the offense could start milking the clock just a little bit more. But I'll tell you what, they looked good when they were upping the speed and upping the pace a little bit and playing with pace and tempo. I thought they did well with that, but yeah, it's a fine line. Like you play that quick, your defense gets back out there a little bit quicker, and maybe that should be noted in the criticism of the defense is. Sometimes the offense plays pretty quick, but I don't recall too many, like either 3 and out or even if you get a couple first downs when the drive's only a minute or too long and the defense is still catching their breath and have to go back out there. I don't recall too many of those, but yeah, they could probably help by keeping that defense off.
I think they can help for sure. Like I think you could definitely make the offense more complimentary if you wanted to. I don't think that's necessarily in the cards at this point. This is an offense that does use RPOs. It's not quite at the level of I think about Auburn, right? Like Auburn lost to Oklahoma on Saturday, and part of that was Auburn is so RPO heavy that they were just pass. That's what they were seeing. That's what we're getting, and when they had an opportunity to milk the clock, and Hugh Freeze even said today, I was looking at some of his comments. He said, I should have just said we need to run the ball more at this point to chew clock up and all that, because they didn't do that. And then there was a fourth quarter comeback for Oklahoma, and that was that. In terms of where they are right now, how complimentary they are, I think they're relatively complimentary at this point. This is a pretty balanced offense, to begin with. I'm trying to pull up the actual pass attempts to rushing attempts at this point as well.
For the season or just on Saturday?
On the season. So, I mean, they passed 193 times. And that's with the caveat that they played from behind in the second half against Auburn and Arizona and also Fresno State and kind of been in positions where they needed to really throw the ball more to get things going. And then they've rushed 169 times in the season. This was always going to be a balanced offense under Jason Beck, and it's lived up to that. I mean, he's from the Robert and I tree. And that's what, that is clearly the style of offense that Bronco Mendenhall prefers. So I think they could make it more complimentary. But I don't think that I really don't think that that's the way that they're going to treat it. I think it's relatively complimentary as is in the way that it is. And they're not going to shy from, the defense is the weak spot. We have to keep them off the field. I think they're in more of a spot where we have to get our defense healthy and we have to just keep correcting the issues that we have. And this is year one too, right? I mean, I think, winning and losing games means a lot to them as well at this point. But at the same time, I don't think there's a huge sense of urgency okay, we're Iowa, and we kind of or not, Iowa's not even a good example. Maybe Texas A&M, where that. Oh no, that's not a good one either. Never mind. I'm not going to keep trying to find an example on that. But yeah, hope that question got a solid answer, Rob. Geoff, what have you pulled up for for us.
So these are the team stats just on ncaa.org. You can pull up all kinds of, look at things all kinds of different ways. And
Very neat, Geoff.
thank you so much. But what I'm trying to show here is if you just look at their national ranks, a lot of these offensive ranks, baby steps, right? A lot of these offensive ranks are top half of FBS, and that is such like if I pulled up last year's, and I could here in just a moment if I wanted to.
And last year, I mean, they were
and they weren't awful last year, but 2 years ago and the year before, like if you just look at the last 3-year sample size or 4-year sample size, these offensive ranks right in here, if you can kind of see the arrow here, I guess the arrow doesn't show up there, but the for total offense to be 27th in FBS right now, that's really good for this program, especially when you consider, they started 0-4, and it wasn't just playing makeup. They were in games with Arizona and Auburn early, and Montana State, who's still undefeated, and now starting to pick up, again, momentum, people thinking that they have a real legitimate chance to win a national FCS national championship. But yeah, you look at all these offensive categories, and for the most part, team passing efficiency at 113 isn't great, but a lot of these stats are pretty good on the offensive numbers. And then you look at total defense at 131 out of 133. That is these stats don't lie. Sometimes they say you are what your record shows. Sometimes you are what your stats show. I think that's pretty fair for this team right now. Is the defense is bad? The offense is actually pretty good. And there's no secrets there. I think that's pretty accurate. Can they become more complementary to each other? I think Rob was right. Maybe that offense can, but if you're gonna jeopardize that total offense ranking of 27, even a little bit, like how much better is 131 in defense? Like if you made a 10-spot jump in defense and you're just ranked 121st in the country in total defense, like, is that worth getting that tempo out of whack or just changing things up on the offense? Maybe not. You better see a pretty significant jump on defense if you're going to start changing things with the offense and risking what's been working pretty well.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I also just kind of don't see it playing out that way in terms of.
Yeah, no, I agree. You already said that you don't see it. They're not changing.
I really don't see that. I don't. Maybe in some like specific instances and all that. Like I'm talking like certain end of game scenarios and all that, if injuries don't improve and there's more injuries and stuff like that, the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to just keep, they do very much have the angle within the program that they believe that they have improved on a week-to-week basis. And I see the case to a certain degree.
Sure.
But it's also, that's just kind of the thing. You're building a program. You're just going to have to build it week by week with the defense and kind of not hiding some of the flaws and all that behind the offense and all that. I just don't see it happening.
We kind of covered some of this earlier, but just to kind of reiterate, I'll let you handle this. R. Thompson 1050 on YouTube is asking, do we think Rodgers is the lead back going forward? Eli Sanders only had 3 carries last game. Sean, what say you?
Yeah, so end of fall camp, one of the things that you consistently hear when you were asked about the running backs is, and sometimes they're relatively pointed questions like, hey, is Eli kind of the lead back right now? Because you would watch him in practice and you would very much feel this guy is the lead guy. Like this is the guy that's going to lead the team in carries in the first game against Montana State, and that's going to be that. And I believe that's exactly what happened. But one of the things you would always kind of hear back was that, hey, we have a lot of different guys with a lot of different skill sets. And we feel good about what those guys can all contribute to the team and all that. And I think you're starting to see that now. I think it was more of a lean towards Sanders at the start of the season. And then Javen Jacobs kind of, he kind of worked his way into a role where he was more interchangeable with Sanders and what he does. And now there's a point where Rodgers has really kind of very loudly announced himself and kind of brought himself into the fold as well. I don't think they're if I had to guess, we don't get depth charts on bye weeks. If I had to guess, I think we would still see Sanders listed as the starting running back heading into this Air Force game. But at the same time, I also think you could also end up seeing where Rodgers is the guy that ends up leading the team in carries and all that. And I think it's there's a case I would probably bet money that I don't know if I would actually. I would be interested to see if at some point down the stretch there is a game where Jacobs leads and carries. I think that is certainly possible depending on the game plan and depending on who they're playing. Yeah, so I don't know if we can. I don't know if it's quite like last year where we're going to look at this and say Ja'Cory Krosky-Mary, that's the bell cow, that's the guy. I think they're going to keep riding with all three guys and putting them in depending on the situation, and that's just going to be that.
I want to revisit something that came up earlier when I misspoke and gave the wrong name. I also tweeted it once already, but just so we're clear, Devin Dampier,
Great.
Donovan Dent, Donovan Dent, Devin Dampier.
Credit to I believe it was Mike Sandoval who shot the.
Both of those photos are Mike Sandoval photos.
Mike Sandoval, best in the business, man. Best in the business.
Yeah, and he is in a unique position now. I'm almost positive he shot the one on the left. I guess I don't know for sure because I don't remember.
I know for sure he shot the one on the right.
But the thing is, when you're a freelancer and he is, and a regular freelancer for the Journal, but also a regular freelancer for UNM Athletics, those photos end up both on the Journal's site sometimes and the UNM Lobo site as well. So good for you, Mike Sandoval, for nailing it and frankly getting paid twice for all I know.
Mike is, absolutely sensational with his work. Obviously, we're looking at the photos right now, and he's one of my favorite guys to just see at events. I love catching up with Mike. So credit to Mike, man.
And both of those happened in Las Cruces. How about that? Like
when you get him down in Cruces, he's going to walk away with something pretty remarkable, something that's on the wall at Frontier.
Got another question here. Let's see here. This is the whole spinning forward. This gets us into a spin forward scenario here. What's the best case scenario for a realistic win total? Seems like some winnable games based on the opponents and performance. Or did we get our one for the Vegas sports books? I will say this, Jet. I'll back up to the offseason. Initially, the over under at a couple places for win total for the Lobos was 1.5, and I thought that was easy money. I thought they would easily get 2 wins, and I still do. They did up that because I don't know how many people were betting it and they moved it, or they just kind of caught themselves and realized it's probably not the best number, but they upped it to 2.5. So the over under we're going to operate with that Vegas has right now is 2.5 wins. So Sean, I ask you, are they going to get to 3 wins? What are the odds in your mind of them getting to 3 wins this season and breaking the win total over of Vegas? And is there a chance that they stay under 2.5 and stay at 1 or 2 wins?
I think they get to 3 wins. I really do. You look at the schedule remaining. We had the bye week this week, but you got Air Force on October 12th. That is in University Stadium, at Utah State, at Colorado State, Wyoming at home, at San Diego State, Wazoo coming to Albuquerque, and then end the season on the islands at Hawaii. I think they get 2 more wins in that stretch. Do I think they get 3 more wins in that stretch? That's an interesting point. I'm not totally sure. And that's kind of where, we've talked about how, we think the offenses look good to this point, but at the same time, it hasn't always been kind of a complete product, right? It hasn't always been, completely, it's like, it hasn't quite been, it hasn't been complete to this point. You haven't really turned in that complete offensive performance. Turned in very good offensive performances, but haven't really done it all the way in a winning effort quite yet. That being said, I think they get 2 more wins for sure. I think Air Force is really intriguing, to be honest with you. I think Wyoming coming to town is intriguing too. I wouldn't be shocked if both those wins actually came at home. I know people aren't impressed with San Diego State and Utah State and Colorado State, but it is tough to win on the road. And it's and even though UNM did that on Saturday, I think that is still something you kind of got to learn through and work through in different points. And I don't know. I think Colorado State certainly has something left in them down the stretch. Utah State, I don't know. I got to watch more of them to really get a good grip there.
I'm going to pull up for you NCAA. I posted this last week, but ahead of the New Mexico State game, and the Lobos had the second easiest. Let me back up. Lobo opponents had the second worst win percentage among Mountain West remaining opponents. Wyoming remaining opponents actually had it. coincidentally, both Wyoming and New Mexico won this past week. So as it stands now, the toughest schedule for future opponents in college football, Middle Tennessee State has the
Our Raiders, man. Gosh.
Conference USA's Middle Tennessee remaining opponents have a 9-21 record right now. That is the easiest schedule in terms of just win percentage. This doesn't take into account any kind of strength of schedule or all those opponents FCS schools or all those opponents SEC schools. It doesn't. This is just wins and losses. But if you scroll down a little bit and you go to the Mountain West, the first team among Mountain West, meaning with the lowest winning percentage for all future opponents, is New Mexico. Just based on who they have left on their schedule, the Lobos' opponents right now are 12-18. They do not play. Look who they avoid in the Boise State.
Boise. I mean, that is that. You missed the two. I think pretty clearly the two best teams in the Mountain West at this point.
And shortly, I mean, they're 14th in the country in terms of opponent win percentage remaining at 400. Colorado State's not too far down at 17th. Their opponents are 15-21. But then you start going down a little ways, and San Diego State's down at 32, and some other opponents, Boise State and Wyoming, their opponents are both 500 remaining. But the Lobos do, just based on wins and losses, have the easiest schedule remaining.
Just based on wins and losses. Just based on wins and losses.
And
I think that's the emphasis there, yeah.
Right, and the point being though is if they are truly rolling right now, if beating a bad New Mexico State team, and right now they're a bad New Mexico State team, that's, I think, accurate. If beating them is totally just fool's gold, then maybe you don't buy into it. That's fine. But the whole 5-game sample size would tell you that UNM's offense right now is going to be able to compete with everybody in the Mountain West, everybody remaining on their schedule. There's no defense that would shut this offense down in its current performance level. Some injuries could happen, some weird things could happen. I get all that, but based on what they've shown so far, the offense is going to be fine against everybody else this season. Your worry still has to be that defense. So if you have one checked off and you don't have the defense checked off, I still think that there's a couple wins in there. I think it's easy money at this point. If you still had a 2.5 win total bet out there that you could take, I do think they get to 3 pretty easily. I don't know how much beyond 3. Like, it's kind of weird to say. I think they easily get to 3, but I don't know that they get to 4 is kind of a weird thing to say. But I think they easily get 2 more wins out of this season. And I've predicted 4 or 5 is what I was saying at the beginning of the season. So we'll see.
Were you actually predicting 4 or 5? I don't even remember really talking. I remember one day talking with you in the office.
Yeah, I thought they'd get to 4 or 5. I never thought they'd get to 6.
My soft wins and my hard potential wins and all
that. That was kind of weird. But yes. But yeah, I never thought they'd get to bowl eligible, but I thought they could get to 4 or 5 wins.
I think 3 feels. I mean, it's hard to say anything is safe with the injuries on this defense, and like I mean, it's Wyoming has been bad, right, to start the season, but I mean, could they have turned a corner maybe against a bad Air Force team where they're, where they're not going to go off and go on a run and go compete for a Mountain West title, but maybe, be passable offensively. And they have good pieces on defense, and they've dealt with injuries too. San Diego State has been really, really messy to start. That is interesting as well. This is all really interesting. And then you just got Wazoo as the penultimate game too. I would say that's probably the game where I think UNM has the least chance of pulling off a win, but at the same time, we'll see where that Wazoo team is kind of at when they come to town November 16th.
Well, I want to point out too their next opponent, the Lobos' next opponent, and they get 2 weeks to prepare, obviously, which is what coaches always say you want when you play Air Force.
Yeah, exactly.
Air Force does play Navy in between. They don't have a bye, so they'll be playing for
good Navy team. That's a pretty all right Navy team, man.
Yeah, and obviously the Service Academy is going against Service Academy games, always emotional and all that kind of stuff. As we were just looking at the records of future opponents, at the same time, Air Force, who is having a bad season at 1-3, their opponents so far this season have the worst winning percentage in the country. They are 4-11, and 3 of those 4 wins are against Air Force.
Is this just FBS?
This is just toughest schedule report. I guess it doesn't say. I don't know.
So they played Merrimack, Baylor, Wyoming. Who's the fourth?
I have it right here. Hold on.
Nice.
San Jose State.
San Jose State. There we go. That's right. They played that early conference game too. Yeah, that Baylor team too. Golly, they might be in quit mode at this point. That is rough.
So the Lobos have a good opportunity coming up, not just in the next several games, but in their very next game. They better figure out how to keep it rolling. Let me ask you this: would you eat we kind of touched on it a little bit on Saturday night, but you did not partake in any of the pregame spread at New Mexico State at Aggie Memorial Stadium.
Mm-mm.
They usually have a good little spread for enchiladas and other Mexican food, and you chose to avoid that.
Prior experiences, I got a little overzealous. I think I needed to take a step back. I do love like the New Mexico State spread. Like it feels very homey in the sense of they just got the tins, with the
it's good branding too, right?
Like it's cool. It's fun, man.
It's an ag school. It's us against the world kind of mentality around there about everything. And what they have is just sort of like almost a tailgate feel of like you said, their catering with they just got the tins out and it's Mexican food, which is great down there, great here in Albuquerque as well. So I like the spread. I like that they brand themselves a little bit.
The only other places that have had a similar feel that I've ever been to was like Kohl Center in Wisconsin for basketball.
Mm-hmm.
They just had tins of mostaccioli, which was great for a 9 p.m. tip Central Time or whatever, ridiculous late game. And then Nevada where they just had cold pizza. That was not as great, but it was very much okay, sure, let's do it. But yeah, big fan of the NMSU spread. Did not partake though. I had to make sure I was good to go for the rivalry game.
Did you get anything afterwards? Did you go have dinner after? You went to Andale's actually beforehand anyway, right?
I went to Andale's and we did our show, and then I left the press box, and I said, I think I'm going to go get some Whataburger. Drove to the Whataburger. The line was just disgustingly long. So I said, well, maybe I'll go do some Taco Bell. And I went to the Taco Bell, and the line was disgustingly long there too.
Living the life. All right.
And I drove to a Circle K that was open, and I got a bag of Chex Mix, and that was what I ate for the night. So,
I got a couple comments related to all that. First of all, you got to go to Chope's one down south. You really do, but you got to go during the day. It's not going to be an after the game kind of.
Oh yeah.
But go to Chope's. I agree here. You got to do that. You said Nevada when you're talking about cold pizza. All About Vegas wants to make sure you get that right.
Yes, I do mean it was. Yes, I was in Reno. I was at Mackey, and there was some cold pizza, and I like cold pizza for sure. So, but it was definitely a different vibe than other press box experiences you have and all that. I've never done a game at Allegiant, so I don't know what that looks like there. But yeah, no, it was Reno.
Non-food related. For some reason, we got a football question here. On YouTube, Juan Beza is asking which player surprised you the most so far. I'll throw out mine real quick, and it might be, it actually kind of might be Ryan. Devin Dampier being as poised as he is actually surprising, though I expected a lot of him, so I won't throw him out there. But between Ryan Davis and Nick Trujillo being a downfield threat the way it's I like the fact that they have receivers other than Luke Wysong. So I might kind of go along the lines of one of those receivers, but man, it might also be Rodgers, but you cover him more than I. What do you say in terms of the surprise player so far?
I might say, I don't know if I would say him, as the most surprising, because you always knew it was there. I do get the case, to a certain degree for like Wysong and all that. It's just because it is just a lot. I mean, he has pretty much the best chance that we've seen in a long time for a UNM receiver to crack a 1,000-yard receiving season for the first time since 2007. The fact that he's in this spot right now, you knew he was going to be a big part of the offense. I didn't think he was going to be as much, where he's fourth in the country in terms of targets on the season. like that. Like I didn't think it was going to be quite at that point, so that is surprising. But it's also, it's a credit to him and how much trust that they have with him in the offense. I don't know if I would say I am. I don't know if I would pinpoint a specific player on the offensive line. You could maybe say Mackenzie Agnello. I think the way that the offensive line is held up has been. You heard good things about it, and during fall camp, they looked like they got a good push up front and all that, and they were able to protect Devin to a certain degree. But you don't know how much of that is going to translate into games, and the fact that it has gotten to a point where they are 5 games in and have not given up a sack and have been able to run block to a pretty good level, and continuously protect Devin, and the penalties have been there for sure. But doing it with a different cast of guys on a near week-to-week basis, that has been really, really surprising. Usually, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of year one teams have that success on the offensive line. It is hard to build offensive lines through the portal. You don't really have a whole lot of plug-and-play stuff going on. Usually, it just takes years of development. It's one of the few positions, I think, in college football where you still want a clear succession plan in the way that you don't need at running back or wide receiver or quarterback even. The fact that it's kind of been at this point in year one is definitely been surprising in my eyes.
All right, let's wrap this up with I want to revisit something. You, about a week and a half ago, broke some pretty big news that you tried a new food for the first time.
Okay. Yes.
I'll ask 2 food updates first, because neither one of these are them. Grapes and blueberries. Have you yet had a grape or a blueberry that you need?
I want to address the first food, the food that I had tried.
Okay, you want to start with that?
I might be off Greek yogurt for a bit.
So Greek yogurt, you tried for the first time. You fell in love with it. It's going to be your new breakfast of
yeah,
champions.
I fell in love with it, and I was eating it every day for breakfast. And it was not to take the show back in this direction, but it was doing some things to my stomach. So I had to take a step back in that regard as well, and make sure we're not overplaying that hand a little bit. So we might be off that for a bit. We might be back to eggs and bacon in the morning. So that might be the play, or oatmeal. I also eat a good deal of oatmeal too. But no, since the last time we have talked, I haven't even seen a grape or a blueberry. I don't know if I've been in like the same vicinity as any of that, any fresh fruit. I had a banana yesterday when I got home from Las Cruces.
Good for you.
Good. Definitely like my bananas for sure. But no,
I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show, but the Journal does have in its lobby a really nice coffee machine that has all kinds of coffee drinks and this and that. And now that I'm saying it, I do think I mentioned it early on one of the shows, but you seem to go all in when you find something you think you like, because that coffee machine also makes hot chocolate. I'm not much of a coffee drinker. So one shift you and I were working.
Adverse circumstances that night. I was steering the ship of the Journal sports section. I had to make sure we got a print product out. No, I
went and tried a hot chocolate. I did not get a coffee. I got a hot chocolate, and Sean wanted to make fun of me.
You didn't get a coffee that night?
No, I did not. I got a hot chocolate. I don't drink much coffee, so I did a hot chocolate, and Sean made sure to make fun of me like I was a little boy.
It was so funny.
I had a hot chocolate. I was happy, and I told him, "Hey, it's actually pretty."
It wasn't. For those at home, like you came out of the lobby with the cup of hot chocolate like you were like a 4-year-old, like showing his like mom or dad, like look at this, like look at this, like yeah, exactly like that. It was pretty funny. You had to be there, I guess.
And the next step was that I said, you know what, this chocolate's actually pretty good. Sean then proceeds to have 6 cups of hot chocolate over the next 2.5 hours.
No, that was a span of like 6, dude. Because when did the power go out that night?
I don't know, but he had 6 cups of coffee.
That went out at about like 6, and like I had 6 over like 5
hours.
No, I think it was like 6, dude. Because
maybe it was a shift. He had 6 cups of hot chocolate. So the point being that he tried the hot chocolate, thought it was good, and went ahead and went all in on it, like apparently he did with the Greek yogurt that he tried. And now, next thing you know, have you had hot chocolate since then?
A couple times, but I've been back on coffee more during the season. I tried to actually cut down on my coffee intake in the off season and just drank a lot of tea instead. But yeah, bet you $5 as a comment up towards the top, Geoff, in terms of Yes, just get a sub from Dion's, do the fruit cup. You can knock them off the list and have a great sub. That might be the play. I got Dion's last week. Dion's has grown on me a lot. I was not in love with it when I first moved here, but
I am not allowed in the Dion's in the greater Albuquerque area.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That is not true. I have not been banned from Dion's, but I once tweeted that I said something to the effect, am I the only one that grabs a whole stack of paper plates from Dion's every time you go in there and get a pizza? Because they used to have their paper plates out, right? And I'd grab a whole stack of them and bring them home. Then I'd have paper plates in the cupboard. I tweeted that once, and Dion's a week later sent me a package of 500 paper plates and said, Geoff, we hope this covers you for a while. Your friends at Dion's or something like that. So I have not taken a paper plate from Dion's in several years since that moment, but I thought it was funny that not only did they play along, I will point out a lot of people replied to my tweet and said, yeah, I've been taking plates from Dion's for years. So
Bet you $5 has another comment on defensive third downs that I would like to actually address too. So, UNM had 10 pressures via PFF against New Mexico State. Pressures, you can look at them however you want to look at them. I think I look at them in a different way. And then they had one sack, one or two sacks, actually. Excuse me, I think it was 2 sacks against New Mexico State. And I asked Bronco afterwards, what did you feel? How did you feel about the pass rushing situation? And he said he said they were in a position where they were getting pressure. They weren't bringing a ton, but they were getting pressure, but they weren't doing a good job in terms of actually executing said pressure. And some of that was stuff in the back end where the coverage has to match the pressure and all that. And that's kind of been the thing there. That's all to paint the picture that I asked him again today about, the sacks. They have 6 sacks in the season, and sacks are kind of an absolute in terms of viewing pressure and how well a team does, and, in terms of generating that. And he said, this is kind of unusual. This is not a team that has been great at getting pressure by any stretch of the imagination. They have played some opponents that you could say that have some better talent on the offensive lines and on offense and all that in terms of like Auburn and Arizona and all that. But he said it's still unusual. It's not something that he's used to in terms of calling a defense by a stretch of the imagination. And he said they would love to be able to, bring more pressure on third downs and really get home with that. And that's not something that they're really currently able to do. That's kind of what I thought of when you mentioned bet you $5, the third down conversion percentage. Yeah, they want to be in a position where it is third and long, and they can bring, not the house, but bring pressure and really get home and all that. And this is just not quite the unit. This is just not quite the defense in terms of doing that. It might have been earlier in the season when they were healthy. What we saw on Saturday night, not quite. So,
all right, a couple loose ends comments on X that didn't pop up into our little setup here. Ben Wysong, this was earlier. We've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes. Some of you, thankfully, are still watching and know. Ben Wysong said bye week couldn't have come at a better time to get these guys the opportunity to get healthy before the start of their conference run. And certainly there's some truth to that, especially because they're winnable games. I mean, a bye week before a bye game, different kind of bye, doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
It's almost like you would, if you're looking at it, it's almost like if you're a fan, you would prefer to have Montana State, Auburn, and Arizona, and then that first bye.
Yeah.
As opposed to the one, kind of wedged in between Arizona and Auburn.
Yeah.
So,
he's right. They got a winnable stretch of games, or at least a stretch of games that they can be competitive. Get your bye right before that stretch is perfect timing for a bye, and you don't often say, "Oh, the bye comes at a perfect time," but and mean it. I think everyone probably says it actually, but
I meant that today. Yeah, when he said if I could have placed it anywhere, it would have been right here. And I think that's an excellent point, and I think it should do the team some good. Oh, we got a home run in Atlanta. Oh, that's just a double.
Just a double. We're going to wrap up here and let everyone get back to their other viewing. Hey, Geoff, longtime reader, first-time writer. Do you think it is better or worse for the Lobos that they won on Saturday? I think that has to do with me being an Aggie alum, a New Mexico State alum. And I will tell you this. given where these two programs are right now and the success that NMSU has had for 2 years in football, I think the UNM Lobo football program needed Saturday's win a lot more than the NMSU football program needed that win. That's not to say things are looking good in Las Cruces right now. I mean, that's a struggling football team right after they lost so much to the transfer portal and their coaching staff and all that stuff. It's not a great time for that program down there. But I'll tell you what, I really think this Lobo football program needed that win more than the New Mexico State football program needed the win. Read into that whatever you want to read into it. I just think it was a better win for the Lobos than it would have been for the Aggies. And so in that regard, good. Go get them, Lobos. Good job.
Mexico State also, they're going into a long bye because Conference USA is shifting into the midweek games and all that, the midweek schedule they do. They kind of have they got a solid stretch ahead in terms of similar to UNM. They got Jack State, who hasn't been great this year, and then La Tech, Louisiana Tech, and then FIU, who I've watched twice this year, and they have been relatively stinky from what I've seen. And then you got two.
Relatively stinky is, I mean, you can tell Sean's he's becoming a vet now. He's getting the jargon down. He's a seasoned pro at this point when he's starting to describe future opponents as relatively stinky.
Yeah, and then you got two hard ones. You got Western Kentucky coming to town, but that is a home game for New Mexico State, and then you go to Texas A&M after that. And then you close the season if you're Mexico State with Middle Tennessee. I believe that is at home, and then UTEP also at home. UTEP is currently winless. They've shown some good, and they've also shown some bad. They're pretty clearly in that year one mode as well. So I don't know. I think if you are a New Mexico State fan, you really wanted to beat UNM on Saturday, but
of course, yeah.
Putting up 40 points and seeing some life out of the offense and Marucci doing a couple nice things, although not winning the game. I'm still high on those two running backs. If you get Shiaza Pete back, at left tackle and all that, I don't know. There could be. I think there's some wins down the stretch for them. I really do.
Last two comments that are on X and not in our system here. All about Vegas. You did have the correction that you were referring to Reno earlier. Did say when we were talking about win total for the Lobos coming up, I could see 3 more wins with that schedule, but 3 total likely, meaning 2 more wins. So he's kind of predicting a 3 or 4 win total, and which means he likes the over, that 2.5 over. Somebody else commented. This is Juan Rodriguez. Commented, guys, what are your thoughts on Texas State added to the conference? Who else would you all like to see added?
Hey, we talked about Texas State a little on Saturday.
A little bit on Saturday. Nothing has happened. The account that says it's a done deal is an account that has had some errors. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You'll know when it happens when I'd like to say when I tell you. I won't tweet that something has happened unless I know it has happened, but I doubt I'll be first with this conference realignment stuff. There's a group of about 5 national guys that have the in to every AD and every agent of these ADs and every commissioner far better than any local beat writer has with a few of the agents or a few of the people in the conference office. I will certainly try my best when that is a done deal to let everybody know that. But it is not a done deal yet for Texas State to the Mountain West. I will give the Pete Thamels, the Ross Dillingers, the Brett McMurphy, Pat Forty, their due. They've been the ones that have broken all the stories on this so far, and they will likely be the ones to break it again. If you see an account called Bobcat Sports or Bobcat Nation or some fan site that has 300 followers saying it's a done deal, verify with those other accounts first before you think it's a done deal. I guarantee you a social media account with 300 followers is not going to probably be the only one with the story for 6, 7, 8 hours before it gets verified by somebody else.
And in fairness, I mean, sometimes you do see that kind of 150 follower account. They do kind of get in front of things and occasionally get that. And
it may end up being right. I don't know that it's right now, though.
Exactly. And Dellinger has been phenomenal on all this stuff. I mean, really, really cool to follow and see. Any in terms of, beyond Texas State, to kind of build off this other question, I mean, do you have any thoughts on it? We've talked about Toledo and Northern Illinois.
I think Northern Illinois is a possibility, man. I really do. And again, as I describe it, is I just don't think the Mountain West wants to have a footprint lying directly under a Pac-12 footprint for a media rights deal that's coming up for both the Pac-12 and in 2 years for the Mountain West. I think they want their footprint to have some difference. I don't think the Mountain West wants it to be identical. I don't think the Mountain West per se says, wow, our future is in the Midwest. I think they think the league is thinking our future is in being somewhat different than what the Pac-12 is, and you need some difference in terms of media market. So I think there's a chance for some football-only membership from the MAC. People wonder why that is. Some people wonder why Texas State would consider going to the Mountain West as it currently stands. The reality is this, and people that want to say the Sun Belt's a better league or the MAC is a better league, the reality is ESPN contracts, unless you're the SEC, unless you're one of the big-time networks, are often based on exposure coming in the form of a couple weeknight games and a lot of ESPN Plus games. You don't really get paid for ESPN Plus games. If schools are getting about $1 million a year, like Conference USA schools and some Sun Belt schools in that $1 million range per year, the Mountain West has going for it that longstanding relationships with Fox Sports and CBS Sports. They might not be in there. What they are right now is $5 to $6 million. If they match that or even drop to $3 million a year, it's still probably going to be better than what the MAC and what the Sun Belt and what Conference USA are currently giving. The Mountain West is hopeful, and the Pac-12 will be better than that. I do think the Pac-12 will have a better TV deal. Probably won't be the 10 to 15 million it thinks it's going to get, but the reality is, whatever we all might think of from our positions as what the better league might be, the better TV league is going to come down to what the TV executives say. And right now, I think the Mountain West is in a much better spot than a Conference USA, a Sun Belt, even a MAC, just because they're really competing with a lot of Big Ten schools. I mean, it's hard to carve out a niche in the Midwest, frankly. And they have, though. You know, the MACtion's done great on weeknights, but their whole league isn't on TV every week.
Exactly. Yeah. And and there are some negatives to action in terms of attendance too. I mean, you know, last year I believe Central Michigan, Western Michigan. I mean, that's a pretty big game in terms of rivalry and all that. That was a weeknight game, and that was an action game, and people were really disappointed with that. Bowling Green, Toledo, that's a big rivalry game as well. That was also a weeknight game, I think 2 years ago, and that just some people too. So it's pretty
and the Mountain West may end up having to take some weeknight games as a result of their new TV deal whenever it comes. It may happen, but it's not good for attendance. It is good for inventory.
Yes.
And ESPN inventory only goes so far if the numbers aren't going to be huge. And frankly, while there's junkies that love the action late at night and love our Pac-12 after dark and Mountain West after dark, sometimes the numbers don't reflect what the TV executives need to see. So anyway, right now, nothing has happened. There is no final Pac-12 new member as of today. There's no Mountain West new member as of today. But I do think we'll see all that stuff in the next day or two. We'll start seeing some of those dominoes start to fall.
It's quiet for a little bit. Nice little weekend. But, we'll dive back into this.
Enjoy your off week. Sean, I think I will probably be doing something Thursday, maybe Wednesday, but probably Thursday, basketball related with maybe a guest from the basketball program. We shall see. And we'll go from there. But Sean, thanks for being on. And unless there's anything else you want to kind of wrap up or throw out there for people, we will sign off here.
No, nothing more from me. We've done our due with with an hour and 20 minutes. So thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in and watching our show Saturday night, the post game. Right before this, I logged on to see how many views it had. Just on X, it was at 1,980, I think it was, views. So I appreciate you for that. And that doesn't include some of them also on YouTube. Most people are watching here on X. And appreciate you guys for watching and tuning in. And we'll be continuing to do these throughout the year. Keep sending us your questions. And thanks for being here, guys.